We're going to take a break from the gold price watch. Price went up, price went down. You need this much to retire. You need this much less. We're going to look instead at the big picture. How do we approach buying something without having to sell a kidney? Because that's a plan that doesn't really scale. At the beginning of the year, January 1st, 2025, the price of gold was $2,624. And today, it is well over $4,100. So that's a 58% gain in less than a year. So buying gold is going to be different than it used to be. Go back to January 1st, 2024, and it's even more profound. An ounce of gold costs $2,064. So we've seen the price of gold more than double in under 2 years. And that doesn't mean that you missed your chance to buy or that you shouldn't be buying today, but it does mean the strategy has changed. And it's changed dramatically. And we're not just talking about spot price here. Premiums have changed. The amount a dealer will pay to buy your gold back has changed. Numismatic value has changed. Everything we used to consider when buying physical gold is different today than it was even 2 years ago. So it's time to reset how we go about it. Now, before we take that further, quick shout out to channel sponsor Summit Metals. If you're looking to buy gold or silver, they have you covered. And hey, if you're looking to sell, they have you covered there too. They'll take care of you on both sides of the sale. SummitMetals.com. Now, let's just start out with a real world example of how locking in the habit can add up. I bought a quarter ounce of gold a month for just over 8.5 years. So 3 ounces a year added up to 26 ounces. My average cost on that would have been around $1,700 an ounce. I did that by buying on a schedule and doing it with cash that I was otherwise wasting. So it was about $450 a month at the time. And that 26 ounces of gold today is worth around $109,000. So a relatively painless monthly plan accumulating a savings of $109,000. That should sound pretty good. Now, we can always find excuses not to do something like that. We can imagine ways that money could have grown more, especially with the benefit of hindsight. But regardless of all of that, as a savings model meant to be a backup rainy day fund, it worked pretty well. Now, I've talked about this before, how I got started, what I bought, why I chose what I did, how I'd sell it, and the tax side of it too. But like I said, most of the planning factors that you need to consider have changed. Now, some of the decisions are still going to be the same, so let's just run through the fundamentals quick. First up would be what to buy. When I started buying in 2008, I bought what I liked. And the gold maple leaf was at the top of that list, and you can probably see why. They're just an amazing looking coin. They kind of draw you in. Now, what I didn't appreciate at the time was that in a sale, it's no longer about your own personal preferences. It is about what others like. And I've experienced that firsthand over and over, but this is an issue that I mostly avoided with my scheduled purchases because when I was getting ready to turn that into a consistent purchase, something I plan to do monthly, I went in and I talked to a local coin shop owner. I asked what he was most willing to buy back. And he didn't skip a beat. He preferred American Gold Eagles over anything else by a wide margin. Now, these aren't as sexy aesthetically, but they were the easiest to sell because they were the most recognized. And then there were factors like high volume buyers preferring them since they didn't trigger any kind of 1099-B reporting when sold. Well, that's something that's changed a little bit then, and we could analyze all of that to see what really made sense, but local buyer preferences aren't always logical. And that really doesn't change the fact that something specific is going to be preferred. And Eagles at the time were the most popular by a wide margin. Now, it's going to be different today, right? Well, not really. The local coin shops that I know still say Eagles and Buffaloes are what everybody wants. Now, probably the more important part is going to be what you're able to comfortably afford. Now, personally, I zeroed in on quarter ounce American Gold Eagles because they checked both boxes, both popularity and affordability, so it was an easy decision. Now, every few months I swapped quarters for 1 ounce coins, not because that was smart, but because it kept me interested. That leveling up to 1 ounce coins was just part of the game. I wanted a tube of American Eagles, so the way that I got there was just simply buying increments that I could afford and then trading them up when I could. I lost a little bit in premium doing it that way, but again, it doesn't all have to be logical. My stretch goal was a tube of Eagles, and that's just how I got there. Now, here's the problem. At today's prices, there's just no way this would have worked for me. I wouldn't have been able to start buying a quarter ounce of gold each month with a spot price above $4,100. The math on a 1/10 ounce actually works out very similar to the way that the quarters did from the 2013 to 2020 era, and they're an option that I would actually consider today. Now, if you caught the hesitation, well, it's because of premiums. If you've seen any of my earlier Gold 101 videos, I have talked about how premiums on 1/10 ounce coins used to be prohibitively high. By mid-2020, 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagles carried premiums of 25% or more. Now, those have come down, but you still have to watch carefully. But the primary consideration is still finding a retail price that you can afford on a recurring schedule if you want to turn this into a saving plan. Now, if you aren't familiar with premiums, it's the percentage you pay above the spot price of the metal. So if you pay 20% premium on a coin and you decide to sell it that same day, you potentially lose that entire amount. So 20%, that's a lot to give up. Now, on a 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagle, a dealer might give you 5% over spot if they buy it back from you. So you'd be giving up a little bit less, but it's still a big factor in setting up a workable plan. Now, something we've had working in our favor in 2025 is that the spot price of gold has increased 58% year to date. So you'd be well ahead of any of those premiums regardless of what you did. The goal, though, is still to reduce your potential buy to sell spread as much as possible. That makes a monthly purchase with a low spread a lot harder today than it was starting out a decade ago. Now look, there's some fun to this as well, game aspect here. If we wanted to only make logical choices, we probably wouldn't be buying anything physical in the first place because it comes with premiums, it comes with storage logistics, and those add to your opportunity cost. Now what I would do today instead personally is stick with quarter ounce purchases and just change my frequency. The bigger the coin, the lower the premium percentage, generally speaking. Now another thing you could do is go with Britannias or gold maple leafs. They're good choices for lower premium, but I wouldn't go any further down the price chain to find cheaper gold than that for a lot of reasons. This year's rally, it's been so strong that we've had a lot more room to do whatever it is we like, but there are still exit plan considerations that are just as important today. Now, before we move off this, another thing that hasn't changed is the idea of gamification. Having short-term goals and stretch goals helps keep it fun. Now, I like these wallets and I like mint tubes to help track progress toward an ounce of gold, toward a few ounces of gold, eventually toward a full tube of gold. It's very easy to see it adding up. Now, I mentioned keeping this fun. Another thing that does that is having a grail to go after now and then. These ultra high relief lunars from the Perth Mint are just amazing. Now, I don't grab them every year, but they hit different than my typical Eagle or Buffalo. They're just a lot more exciting. Now, let's be clear here. This is not your best practice. I wouldn't generally recommend chasing expensive numismatic gold coins, but it's hard to argue how interesting they are. And then every once in a while, there's going to be a coin that I know will do well on the secondary market. And I should probably say think will do well because they're all going to be hit or miss. But the 2021 High Relief American Liberty from the US Mint was really a standout. And these now have bid prices nearing $20,000 on eBay. Some are even higher than that. Now, I paid $2,715 for it, which is a pretty good return if I go to sell it, but I don't let that throw me off my consistent purchases. I just don't want to ignore the fact that there can be more to this than a plan that's just slow and steady and sometimes boring. And since we're on this topic of trying to stay interested, series coins like these Perth Mint Lunars more or less require you to make a purchase every year. And that's a good thing. These don't carry higher premiums if you buy them at the initial release date, but they can sting if you try to backfill a collection later on. And the downside is that they do take a little bit more work to sell. Most buyers just don't care about that collector value. I'll take that one step further. My local dealers will pay less than they would for an Eagle. Online dealers, they might be a little bit more open, it depends, but to capture the real upside of a coin like this, you have to use a platform like eBay. That takes time, that takes patience. All right, let's dial this back into standard buying. Something that I want to point out here is that even though I'm splashing around a fair amount of gold on the desk and I'm flashing a coin that may be worth $15,000 to $20,000, I have never made a purchase of more than 2 ounces of gold at any one time. All of this has come from a little bit of discipline and about 17 years of buying. I can think of one time that I picked up an Eagle and a maple leaf together, but beyond that, it's an ounce of gold or less. So I don't make large single purchases. This Roman Aureus would be probably my only exception. It was $4,000 or $5,000 at the time, but this doesn't really even fit into the conversation because this was, I guess, a pure collector grail. I've wanted a Roman Aureus, particularly a Marcus Aurelius Aureus, for as long as I can think of. It's a personal interest, and I'm just showing it here to make the point about the upper limit of what I've spent. Now, a lot of what I've covered up to now is pretty general, finding a buying cadence that works, learning what's easiest to sell in an emergency, and then just sticking with it. Those are the fundamentals, and if you want to step that up, you just look for ways to trick your brain into forming that habit, game it up to keep it fun. All of that works in any price environment. Now, here's what's changed. In October of 2025, an ounce of gold cost $4,150. That's before premium. A quarter-ounce American Gold Eagle costs more than $1,100. A 1/10 ounce Eagle is getting pretty close to $500. The price of gold has grown faster than almost everything else, so buying a quarter ounce a month today is just not like buying a quarter ounce a month in 2014. And it doesn't matter if you adjust for inflation, it's simply far more expensive than it was a decade ago, so you have to plan differently. Now, I think realistically that means buying less gold, but still buying consistently. Less gold doesn't mean less value, and we need to reset what we think an ounce of gold represents. Now, if the price of gold has doubled, even after adjusting for inflation, then it doesn't take a mathematician to see that each ounce now carries twice the buying power that it used to, which means your gold goes twice as far, and it might mean you need half as much. Now, that might sound strange coming from somebody who's pro-gold, but the strategy has to adapt to the price, and the consistency over time is going to be more important than the weight of any one short burst. At the beginning of this, I mentioned a relatively painless monthly habit that turned into a stack of gold now worth $109,000. That plan is repeatable, but not without a few changes. Something has to change to keep it painless, but the part that makes it work is still the same. It's time and persistence. Time is money, right? Well, figure out the right plan, and it can be better than money. And let's call it good there. Let us know what you think. Do monthly purchases still work? I think they do, but just not like they did in 2014. The good old days. Let us know what you're up to, though. And then while you're in the comments, be sure to hit the like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you want to hear more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.